Yeah, and you've also become an educator, like 20 years in higher education, teaching and making courses available.
One of the funny stories I like to say is that when I was in high school, I passed all my classes on the way to my car. Uh,
Welcome to Get Curious. I'm your host, JL Palmer. Join me as I explore my curiosity about our guest, founder of Dist Media and The Daily Pitch, and the author of 10 Topics to Help Managers, Leaders, and Entrepreneurs Get Better at What They Do. He also hosts the podcast Dist Media, a startup story, where he documents the real journey of building a media company while interviewing founders and operators about what works, what fails, and why. Ben Olmos, welcome to Get Curious. How are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
What? I don't know. Technical challenges. They give me a little bit of grief. How about you?
Oh man, I've had them. Believe me, it is totally okay. I had one recently with a guest, and my podcast I do video as well. And so I had to scramble last minute because I forgot to charge the batteries in my camera. I pulled it off, but was late. And I get it. I've been there.
Well, I appreciate the understanding here. You're the founder of Dis Media and The Daily Pitch, and you've got quite a way of doing your podcast as a host. I know there's more to it than just the podcast, but you've got your startup story that you're sharing with everyone, and you're sharing not only your own personal account, but also, in interviewing other individuals.
Yeah. The podcast kind of started out as, kind of chronicling our failure.
Mm.
But really what it was I wanted to try and give people an inside perspective on what it's like to start something from absolutely nothing. I have, like many people, have seen online a lot of folks go out there and talk about how easy it is to spin up a business, to sell something on Shopify, to make a bunch of money, to have this secondary, kind of mailbox income that, sounds really nice, but in practice doesn't always work out quite that way. And I think a lot of times people have questions about, how to do it and how to be successful. And so one of the things I wanted to do was really kind of chronicle what it's like to start something with zero followers, with, a shoestring budget, with having to do everything on your own and try and make something of it. So that's kind of where it started. And then it's evolved most recently into really getting into the stories of other founders and other people who are building a name for themselves and building their own credibility online.
And I find that fascinating, being that the title of my podcast is Get Curious. I'm sure you have a similar take on it. Is that everybody's adventure is very unique, and we can find some takeaway or some gem in all of it.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, the first there's probably I got about 10 or 12 interviews in, and I loved the content that was coming out of it. And I'm very much a technical person. So one of the things I was realizing as AI is emerging, and from every podcast, I've got all these wonderful transcripts of content. And I started really kind of going through them and saying, like, what are the nuggets here? What are the common themes? What are some impressions that are being made across all of these interviews that I've been doing? And used that as a catalyst to put a book together, really kind of my first book, drawing from a little bit of the inspiration of those conversations, and then also doing a little bit of research on my own to kind of, suss out some good content and good insights from some of those conversations.
Yeah, and that's called 10 Topics to Help Managers, Leaders, and Entrepreneurs Get Better at What You Do. When did you publish this?
So earlier this year, I would say I would say about January-ish this year. And again, completely done on my own. The whole basis of what I do is to do everything without spending a lot of money doing it. The reason I want to go down this path, and believe me, There have been a bunch of people who have reached out, hey, we can take your content and we can bump it up. We can edit your book. And all of it, of course, is always for just a few $1,000s. They can help you, do X, Y, and Z. And I'm sure they can. And I'm not saying these folks aren't good at what they do, but I'm also very curious about, well, what does it take to do it without that help? Because not everybody has $2, $10, $20,000. And I kid you not, some of these folks who are book publishers, who are audio podcast producers, they want a significant amount of money to help you get seen. And so what I try to do is mostly everything myself, and really kind of tell the story of how hard is it, and what do you need to know to do that stuff. So book is self-published, put it out there on Amazon, on Barnes and Noble, have it on my own website, tried to make it as organic and guerrilla tactics as possible.
Fantastic. Yeah, I have a background in helping authors market their books and distribute through platforms. I don't know if you're familiar with Draft to Digital, but that's definitely a platform. If you haven't and you intend to do another book, would be a good one. But yeah, it's time consuming. You have to put the
Yes.
effort in, and if you don't have the time and you do have the money, well, there's value in that.
There is.
But there's also value in the learning, the getting curious and learning it on your own, for sure.
Yeah, and my believe me, there are charlatans in this world who I really have been turned off by some people out there on the internet, especially on YouTube, who try and make this stuff sound really simple and turnkey. And to your point, you do have to weigh how much it costs of your time and your attention and your value versus, letting somebody else drive. And I think there's value certainly in doing that right now. And, hopefully Disc Media gets to a point where, we can invest in that kind of growth and that kind of, kind of marketing and things like that. But until we do, it's kind of like, how do you build this thing on your own and make it work?
Very much so. And I think that a part of your background too, 30 years of being so hands-on in the consumer packaging goods industry, you see, people, and you've probably helped them along, come up from absolute nothing with their product and try to introduce it to a market. And then they're out there at these little trade shows before they get picked up by the likes of a big box store or a Costco or the like. That background, how does it help you now?
Well, I have to say, in all honesty, I worked for one of the biggest for 20 years, which is Coca-Cola. And that story of the small consumer brand and helping them break into the big. Now, there are people who know that. I've actually interviewed some people on my podcast who do that kind of work. That is a side of the industry that I haven't really gotten into as strongly. Most of the work that I have done have been with big, well-established, customers and brands already. So like I worked with Disney and Walmart and, Target, big retailers, big restaurant chains, but what I can say is that experience in working with those customers at that scale, working on big national programs for those kinds of customers, there's a lot that I've been able to integrate into what I do and how I've helped and consulted with other businesses, how I've helped small business, what I do now for the company I work with, because the media company is not my full-time gig, if you will. My 9 to 5 is with an Italian wine importer.
Ooh.
And so, yeah. So I went from soft drinks to wine, which I always joke that I went to a much healthier beverage.
Depending on the consumption level. Yeah.
Exactly. But what I've learned and been able to take away from that and move that into, smaller organizations is a lot of what it takes to build up those big brands, like getting on the inside and understanding how those brands operate, how they scale, how they work with customers, all of that stuff becomes very helpful in the work that I do now.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, and you've also become an educator, like 20 years in higher education, teaching and making courses available to people.
Yes, my path to higher education, I wouldn't say was one that anybody would have predicted. Um, One of the funny stories I like to say is that when I was in high school, I passed all my classes on the way to my car. Uh, was not a great high school student. Not that I didn't love learning, but I just was not. I was really more into a social scene than an academic one. And as I got older, I kind of realized that, my options were limited. And so ended up, believe it or not, I actually got hired on at Coca-Cola. It was a very low level, entry level job. I was making $5.50 an hour
Oh my God.
and got hired on as a contractor. I eventually converted to full time. And that's where I realized that the opportunities in that company that paid well, you needed 5 to 7 years experience and a college degree. And I figured, well, I'm kind of year one working here. If I go back to school now, in 5 to 7 years, I'll have a degree and the experience, and I should be able to move up into some of these jobs that I'm seeing that I want to do. And so that kind of started my academic journey. And once I did my undergrad, fell back in love with school, did my MBA, did my PhD. And all the while, after I did my MBA, I was like, I kind of like the school thing, but I wasn't sure that I wanted to go back and get another master's or do a PhD yet. So I inquired about teaching at a University of Phoenix. It was right around the corner from my office, and they were hiring, and that kind of started the things going. And the first year I was teaching, I actually won Faculty of the Year, which was crazy because I'd never
Oh,
really taught.
congratulations.
Yeah, I'd never really taught before, and it's just been a journey since then. Now, 20 years later, I've been director of an MBA program. I've been area chair for programs. I've designed over 75 different, taught or designed over 75 different courses in business, from management, sales, marketing, entrepreneur, operations, like all kinds of different stuff that I've taught. And, continue to, kind of evolve. I've taught for 7 different schools and universities. And, I've been doing it continuously for 20 years. So it's been fun.
So what's the draw? Like the human dynamics of this? What do you get out of it?
If you haven't figured out by now, I love being busy. I love getting my hands dirty into stuff. I love building things, outside of the consumer packaged goods world, outside of the academic stuff. I started this media company really kind of partly as an experiment, partly out of curiosity, like you seeing all these people on YouTube, on social media, people who have a following. Like, how do you do that? How do you build that? I learned about SEO, like search engine optimization, and I'd done a little bit of website building, but I never really did it as a concentrated project. And so for me, as somebody who likes the technical stuff, likes building things, that uses, databases and technology and all kinds of stuff. Plus, when I was a kid, I was into music and digital music. So I've always kind of had, audio, video stuff in my background as well. It was just kind of a way to bring it all together and have fun. And so, yeah, now I kind of have like 3 jobs and I'm doing something with all of them every single day.
You have no downtime.
Yeah, I have a really bad work-life balance. I have, I always say I have work life, not work life balance. But I do still, it's amazing. I still make a lot of time to spend with family. I have a wife and 2 daughters. They're older now, but we still go off and do things. We still, go on vacation. We still spend time with each other, and and funny enough, I still spend a lot of time even consuming media, like watching TV, watching movies, going to movies and stuff like that. So yeah, it's what I would say. I always try to put it this way when it comes to the media business. People have hobbies, and sometimes people have season tickets to their favorite sports team, or they go to a lot of concerts, or they go out to eat a lot. My hobby is running this media company. What other people might spend doing things as their recreation, like this is kind of my recreation. And for some it seems like work, but for me it's fun.
Yeah. Yeah. If you could find the fun. And for me, finding the fun is finding the things to be curious about, like me being curious about your startup podcast and Disc Media, and being curious about the daily pitch, being curious about your book. And then of course, being curious about the education that you're doing on top of all of that. It's a very interesting, they say we're all unique, right? But I've not come across anyone who's kind of put the consumer goods or packaged goods like in the history around all of the rest that you're doing.
Well,
It's
what's interesting about the consumer goods world. So, Coca-Cola is a brand company. Yes, they have a product, right? Coca-Cola, flagship product's what they're known for. But, at the end of the day, one of the things we used to joke about is it's, caramel colored carbonated sugar water, right? It's less about the product, although they would, argue that with me because they're very passionate about the product. But they have, I think it's $19 billion brands, like brands on their own that are worth over $1 billion. Well, everything kind of comes back to marketing and branding, no matter what you're doing. And so the consumer packaged goods stuff, I mean, yeah, I've always kind of been on the operations side of things. So understanding what they call routes to market, like how do you bring something from manufacturer to putting it on the store shelf? The lessons I've learned in that work and that kind of process and workflow play in really well to all of the other things that I do, because I look at everything that I do from that kind of workflow, process, routine, brand, market, scale, lens. And everything I do kind of boils down to that. It's interesting. My daughter, my youngest, is an actress, and we talk all the time about your branding, your personal image. How to market yourself, how to get yourself out there, how to get noticed by other people. Like everything we do has an element of that in it. So there's a lot actually that it's amazing. I'm kind of thankful I've had this consumer goods background experience, because it's really helped out a lot in a lot of things that I've done.
So the thing that stands out for me is the part where the systems and all of this is what, with people who are not using ecosystems to actually spread the word about their podcast, I find there's a big miss, because all of those systems are so very important. And when you talk about an established brand, they do have all their systems working together. And when they're not working well, they can very easily pick out where it's not working.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say, at scale, it's funny because you and I, before we sat down to record today, you had kindly messaged me on Substack, and you said, "Hey, your link isn't working, over here." And then turned out there were quite a few that that had not been pointing to my updated YouTube channel, and so I went and I went through and corrected all of that stuff. But that is a little bit of the challenge sometimes, is when things get so broad, because to your point, to make sure people are aware of a podcast, you've got to hit, like I hit Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, X, Threads, and Substack,
Yeah.
all to promote this and get it attention. It's crazy.
Yeah, so I've got guests reaching out to me. And it's interesting because they don't have a website. And they don't have, all
Oh,
they have
yeah.
is their PodMatch profile. And it's like, well, okay, so you're going to be a guest on the show. And it doesn't matter to me one way or the other. I'm going to have a great conversation. If I'm curious enough about them, it really doesn't matter because I have the channels. I'm going to promote it on my channels, but at the same time, you'd like the conversation to be promoted from both directions. And
Yeah.
it's like, okay, well, you don't have one channel, never mind the ecosystem that it requires to get the word out. And so how do you intend to share it? Do you intend to share it? So those just some of those questions that I like to ask, just again, out of curiosity. It's like some podcasts are running off of, and I'm writing an article about this, RSS feed alone.
Yeah.
They're expecting so let's say Apple Podcasts or Spotify to distribute. That's not really the definition of distribute.
Well,
You-
and you're in a sea of voices,
Mhm.
so it's great that the RSS feeds pick you up, but you've got to do some work. Again, we'll tie this back into consumer packaged goods world. If you have a product and you want your product inside Walmart or, a big grocery store chain, Safeway, Kroger, Publix, whatever it happens to be, you know, it's one thing to get your product on a distributor's truck, right? That's just one step.
Yeah.
Then you have to also promote it because you have to create pull for that brand. You have to make people want that brand. You have to make them want to go into the store. And so you have to advertise. You have to cut deals. You have to discount. You have to make it appealing and every day be working that brand. Every day be marketing that brand to create the pull. If all you do is worry about getting it on a distributor's truck and go, okay, that's it, my job's done, they'll drop you. They go through. Retailers do this all the time, and they do what they call SKU rationalization. And basically, what they do is they look at all of their brands that are selling. They look at the bottom, and they go, well, this brand ain't making us any money. It's not. People aren't coming in asking for it. We're going to get rid of it. That's exactly what happens to your podcast when you don't promote it, when you don't market it.
Yeah, and when they think their job is done, pretty soon it will be if they don't. I mean, this is where we can go back to Coca-Cola and say, okay, they did this so well in the sense that they are the absolute undisputed master of using bring the world together messaging, right? That
Yeah.
they created this whole community around sharing a Coke.
Yeah, yeah. It's a very powerful brand, and when you kind of grow up in my professional world, I kind of grew up around that branding, marketing, messaging. It's what I try to bring into what I'm doing, and at the end of the day, too, one of the things that I'm trying to create in this media company is a platform for other people.
Yeah.
My ultimate overarching goal is I want people to want to be on this show because they're going to know that they're going to be able to get exposure and traction from the connection of being on the show. So
And
at
the
the end of
effort
the day,
you're
that's
putting in. Yeah.
so yes, I'm trying to build a show and a platform, but I want it to be beneficial for the people who spend their time with me as well.
Not only the guests, but also the ones that obviously are listening. So for our listeners, we'll definitely be putting information about you in the show notes, where to find the podcast, where to find Daily Pitch, where to find your book. What else would you like to share with us?
Wow. One of the things I talk about all the time, we're on a mission right now to hit 100,000 YouTube subs by the end of 2026. So I would love it if you're listening to this, you're curious about the show, curious about some of the guests we've had on, go to Dis Media on YouTube, check out our YouTube channel, hit subscribe, join the party. And I am also opening up more what we call the Daily Pitch community, which is a platform that I'm using to help other businesses and people get connected, grow, share ideas, all of that wonderful stuff. So that's something else in the works as well.
Okay, definitely all over that one. Thank you so much for your time today, Ben.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
I know you want to get to know our guests better. I definitely will be. If you'd like help with your podcast or you'd like to be my next guest, check out the show notes for details on how to get signed up with PodMatch. Until next time, stay curious, keep exploring, and keep growing.